to get started, I'm going to give an overview of the basic photography spark that we're doing today. So the three main parts are going to be talking about the electromagnetic spectrum. We're going to talk about the rule of thirds, which is an element of design. And then we're going to talk about how to take pictures of some of our favorite objects. So we've asked you to gather a piece of paper, something to write with, and then 2 to 3 of your favorite objects from around your house, or maybe there's something in your backyard you can go take pictures of after the video. So I'm going to start off with our 4-H pledge. So if you're new to 4-H or if you are just getting started, the 4-H pledge explains our 4 H's, and then we'll dive into basic photography. So we have our head, heart, hands, and health. And so the 4-H pledge says, I pledge my head to clearer thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to larger service, and my health to better living for my club, my community, my country, and my world. So there are your 4 H's, and it's time to get started with basic photography. So the electromagnetic spectrum, that's your big word for the day, and it is a science topic. And what we're going to do to start out with is we're going to actually draw the electromagnetic spectrum. And in the middle of that spectrum will be visible light. And that's why we're talking about it with photography, is because photography is drawing with that visible light. And that's a section of the electromagnetic spectrum. So to get started, we're going to have you draw some squiggly lines, and they're going to start out really close together and then get bigger and bigger. So on the left-hand side of your page, you're going to have, and I've already drawn it up from our live video, but you're going to start small and then get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so as you're drawing that, I'll explain that the left-hand side are shorter wavelengths. Those represent the higher frequency and higher energy waves. And on our right-hand side, the longer wavelengths, those are slower frequencies and lower energy. So now we're going to identify the different sections because there are different names for different types of waves. And on the left-hand side, first up we have, with our highest frequency and our highest energy, gamma rays. That's G-A-M-M-A rays, gamma rays. That's the first section. And if you want to draw like a timeline as you're writing, you can fill this in with me. So we have gamma rays. Next, X-rays. You've probably heard of X-rays. You can probably think of a couple ways that we use X-rays too. Then ultraviolet. That's U-L-T-R-A-V-I-O-L-E-T. Ultraviolet. Next up, our section of the day, visible light. So this is a smaller section, but it's important because it's how we see. It's what we can see around us. Our eyes are able to perceive visible light. You can't see ultraviolet or infrared waves without special devices that can help you see those. So I gave it away. The next section to the right of visible light is infrared. I-N-F-R-A-R-E-D, infrared. Then microwaves. We all know what microwaves are, right? If you've popped a bag of popcorn in your microwave, it uses microwaves. M-I-C-R-O, micro, small, W-A-V-E, microwave. Then finally, radio waves are furthest to the right on the electromagnetic spectrum. I'll read it through them again if you missed any or if you want to review. So first, to the left with our shorter wavelength, our tighter together squiggles, higher frequency and higher energy, gamma rays, then X-rays, ultraviolet, visible light, infrared, microwave, and radio. So that's an overview of the electromagnetic spectrum. And I have a couple questions for you about the electromagnetic spectrum. So first, go ahead and think about, how does the electromagnetic spectrum play a role in your everyday life? Did you use microwaves to heat up food? Did you once break a bone and need an x-ray? And of course, visible light. How do you use visible light in your everyday life? To see, to move around, to see beauty, to appreciate colors and textures? So how, in what ways, or how does the electromagnetic spectrum affect your everyday life? Go ahead and think about that. If you are with some siblings or some family members, maybe you want to share your answer with them. I'll give you a moment. You can put it in the comments too. Next, I want you to think about the colors in the visible light section of the electromagnetic spectrum. So when we look at visible light, let's take a moment to learn just a little bit more about it. It's in the middle there of our electromagnetic spectrum. Visible light. It's measured in nanometers, the waves are. So on your left-hand side of visible light, you have more of your violet colors. It's closer to ultraviolet, if that helps you remember. And that starts out, visible light starts out at about 400 nanometers. And as we move to the right on our spectrum, it goes to about 700 nanometers. Anyone want to guess what color that would be? It's next to infrared. That's a hint, but it's red. So your red colors. So if you think about your rainbow is within visible light, from purple or violet to red. 400 to 700 nanometers is approximately the visible light section of the electromagnetic spectrum. So if you think about the colors within visible light, which is your favorite and why? Mine might be blue because it's the color of the sky, it's the color of water sometimes, really beautiful water, and I just really like blue. It's comforting, it's cool, it calms me. So my favorite would be blue. All right, it's ready. I think we're prepared now. We're ready to talk about the rule of thirds and start in on photography. So we learned about visible light and how that relates to photography, but now we're going to talk about an element of design, the rule of thirds. And so I've taken, this is a 4x6 size of paper. And so if I were to take a photo that's 4x6, I could lay it on top and I could look at that. If you're looking through like a phone screen, if you see a phone screen, you can see an image or see a picture through a piece of thin paper, like your copy paper or a thin piece of scratch paper. So you can make your, we're gonna take a little bit to make a graph of our rule of thirds with our squares, our 9 squares. And then I've also made the rule of thirds a guide for myself and for us to share together on wax paper, so we can look at some bigger photos and talk about it together. But first, let's make our guides. So if you want to take a piece of paper, you might have to take some scissors, or maybe you can just tear it to about the size of either your, maybe you have a camera and you want to do the size of the lens there. It may even have some guides. A lot of cameras have the digital camera, it may have some guides on it that you can use. You can program those in there. So maybe have your mom or dad or someone who helps you with photography show you the guides on your camera. If you're just on your phone, a piece of paper can be about the size of your phone screen, and you can fold it and use it on your phone, or maybe an iPad or a computer. Whatever works for you works. So the rule of thirds looks kind of like a tic-tac-toe board. you have two lines that create thirds going horizontally and vertically. So we're gonna fold, fold down, fold again, and you have 3 vertical sections. And you turn your paper, fold once, fold twice, and now you have 9 squares or rectangles, depending on the size of your paper. So let's check out the rule of thirds in action with some photos. So I'm going to start with, who knows what this is? It's a grain elevator. It's kind of an old one, but you can see that there's a shed. This is where trucks would drive through to dump their grain after harvesting it. It has a word on there on the sign that says juniper. When I'm looking at it in person, that stands out to me. So we'll see how it lines up with the rule of thirds. I also look at the shape and the textures of the objects. So because this is a black and white photo, you look at the dark and light areas. So this is a little darker area. The sun reflecting on these grain bins, those stand out to me. So we'll see how those match up with our grid for the rule of thirds. Let's do it. So I'm gonna line it up. And here we go. Okay, so I pointed out the shed that they drive through, the trucks drive through to dump grain, and boop, there's one of the corners. So that kind of lines up with the rule of thirds. I talked about the bright spots on the silos here, and they kind of line up. So not a bad example of the rule of thirds. Let's look at a horizontal picture. Here's a landscape. It's another photography term, landscape. So, anyone want to guess where this is? Put your guess in the comments. So we have the Milk River. There's some sky. There's a rock formation and some grassy area. We have the trees creating some contrast in the center of the photo. Let's put on our grid. Not bad. If you can tell that the sky is about a third of the photo, the river is a main point, and there's a rock formation over here, or part of the hill is taking up in the center of the photo. You have some grassy area here to kind of balance out and make 2/3 land, 1/3 sky. So there's an example with a landscape of the rule of thirds. So I have some questions for you. If you have your slip of paper, if you want to add, if you folded it up, if you want to add some lines, you can take a ruler or a straight edge and draw some lines on there real quick. So just trace it, trace those rule of thirds. 1, 2, turn it. 3 and 4. Great. So now I'm going to take my phone. Maybe you have a phone or maybe a camera that you can pull up photos on. Let's find a photo that we can use to look at the rule of thirds. So I was taking a walk the other day, and the sun was shining, so I took a photo. You can see the road there, and then there's some trees in the sky. Let's see how it lines up. So this paper is a little larger than my screen, and you may have to turn your screen up on bright. You can do this with your mom or dad later too. And I'm holding it up. Looks like I have a little more sky than I would have wanted. But not too bad. So let's think about the rule of thirds and picture in your mind, what are some of your favorite photos? Do you have a photo in your room that's hung up on your wall? Or maybe on a desk or somewhere in the house? Is there a picture of your family? Maybe a pet? Do you have a favorite pet? They make good subjects for photos. So think about why a particular photo is your favorite. Does it follow the rule of thirds? Is it colorful? Does it have sentimental value? So how can you use, thinking about that photo and future photos that you're going to take, how can you use the rule of thirds? How can you use the rule of thirds to take better photos? So let's think about it more generally. If you think about photography as art, because it is an art form, it's a form of expression, it uses color and design. If photography uses the rule of thirds, can you think of art examples that use the rule of thirds? Okay. Now that you've thought about those questions, hopefully you're more prepared to go out and use the rule of thirds to take better photos that need less editing, less after the fact work on them. They're just ready to roll. That's the goal when you take a photo, right? So before we get to our favorite objects, I do want to mention a special announcement about a photography group that 4-H is going to have. So it's been posted about in our basic photography event on North Carolina 4-H, and it is a 4-H youth photography workshop. You don't have to be enrolled in 4-H to partake, but we would like to welcome youth to bring their skills into focus with this workshop. And the workshop will be online from 3 p.m. to 3:45 in the afternoons on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the first date is March 31st, coming right up. And then the Thursday date that week is April 2nd. The following week, we'll meet April 7th and 9th, Tuesday and Thursday. And then we'll have a capstone gallery event on April 21st to show off your hard work. So please join us for the 4-H Youth Workshop on photography. There is a link to register in the event discussion, so please register and we'll look forward to having you. So now, I hope you have 2 or 3 of your favorite objects from around your house. I've chosen a book that I like. It's a big book, but a good book. And then a piece of art from a friend. My friend Riley gave this to me. And I think one of the things she likes about it, and one of the things I definitely like about it, are the colors and the textures. They made impressions in this piece of ceramic, this piece of pottery, and you can feel the leaves, you can feel the flour, how it was pressed into the material, the clay. So I really like this. And if you stop and maybe hold the object that you are wanting to take a photo of, notice the color, notice the textures of the object. This has a hanger, and I really like when I was talking about the texture and the feeling of the art, it makes me think that I should go outside, take a picture, maybe hang it because it has a hanger on a low tree branch or a bush, and have the greenery as a background for this piece of art. I think I'll take a picture and send it to my friend. For my book, you could just have your book set down on a desk or on a table, maybe in a chair. You could stand it up, but there are some creative ways to think about other ways to take pictures of maybe your favorite book. So when I think about how I might take pictures of this book, I might want to open it up, maybe find an illustration. There are a few illustrations in this book. There's one. I can have a family member hold the book as though they're reading it. Maybe have them read it. Maybe I could peek out from behind the book. Lots of options. So think creatively when you have your objects picked out and you choose what you want to take photos of. And be sure and share your photos that you're taking in our comments or in our event discussions so we can compliment and enjoy all of your artwork, your photography artwork. I did find one more object that I'd like to talk about from around my home. It's a deck of cards. My family loves to play cards when we get together. And so I think cards are also a good example of ways that you can have action shots. So maybe you have someone shuffle the cards and you could take photos of them shuffling the cards. Adjust the shutter speed. That's a way that you can manipulate and manually control a camera. Adjust the shutter speed for how fast it's going to be, how much light it's going to be letting in, what kind of light? Visible light from the electromagnetic spectrum. And you could also, if you would pick it up afterwards, you would probably have to do this a couple times, you could throw some cards in the air. You could have an action shot of playing 52 card pickup, right? So I also thought of Jenga. If you had some focus when you were removing one of the wooden blocks in Jenga, if you've played Jenga, and you're putting it on top, that concentration, you could really capture some emotion if you were taking pictures of some family or friends or neighbors taking pictures of them playing Jenga. So those are some thoughts, and hopefully will help you think creatively about taking photos. So we're going to wrap up, and again, I hope you'll join us for the photography workshop. I hope you've learned something today about the electromagnetic spectrum, the rule of thirds, and how to get more involved in photography. So please take some pictures and do share those photos with us here on North Carolina 4-H. We'll be happy to see those, and I think it'll be really fun for you all to share them with one another. Have a great day. Bye.